We know it's important to be very influential in business today to be successful. However, you don't want to be manipulative. How do you do it in a persuasive and pleasant way? Well, to find out about that, I got a chance to talk with Bob Burg. He's the co-author of the book, Go-Giver Influencer, the latest in the series of the Go-Giver books, and he went in depth. I mean, we really got to some nitty-gritty on how you can be more influential without being manipulative and being able to be kind, nice to people and have them doing something because of what they want to do. Join me as we get a chance to look at how you can be a better influencer and get ahead and succeed as I talk with Bob Burg of the Go-Giver Influencer. Persuade and how to influence others. We know that influence is, well, it's important whatever you're doing. As an entrepreneur, as a business manager, as a thought leader, you want to be able to do that. And you know, there was a book that I read recently that really helped me a lot. And it's part of a series of books that have come out called The Go-Giver. You might have seen those before, and we've had the chance to talk with one of the co-authors of that, Bob Burg, before. This is one I think they've gone way beyond. As great as the others were, they've even taken it up a few notches. And it's a Go-Giver Influencer. And matter of fact, we've got a real treat for you because right now, joining us from his offices in South Florida is the man himself, co-author of the book, Bob Burg. Bob, thanks for being with us today.
Hey, great to be with you, Terry. Always great to speak with you.
Yeah, I really appreciate what you've done with this book on influence and gaining the ideas and the story, the way you put it together. It's a story that you get involved with, you kind of lean forward, and the ending on this one is great. I'm not going to share the ending for those of you that are watching this. You want to see it. Bob, tell us a little bit about the Go-Giver Influencer and it is, how it is like other books that you've had in that series, and how it is a little bit different.
Sure. It's another parable, so it's a short story co-authored with the great John David Mann, and you know John. He's a brilliant writer.
Yeah, wonderful guy.
He is. And you know, throughout our Go-Giver series, influence has always been a part of it. Law number 3 of the original book, The Go-Giver, was the law of influence. In our book, The Go-Giver Leader, it was a story about leadership and influence. We decided to take this one and just kind of drive deeper into influence itself, because influence is so important. When you think about it, you can have practically all the positive aspects of an ultra successful person, Terry. You can be very talented and of extremely high character. You can be ambitious, kind, charitable, hardworking, thrifty, energetic. You can have a knack for knowledge and a head for business, and all that's great. It's terrific. However, unless you can influence others, move people to the desired and appropriate action, your chances for attaining that stratospheric kind of success is somewhat limited. Now, on the other hand, when combining both benevolent intent and a learned skill set, you can find yourself constantly, consistently, and predictably attaining satisfaction both personally and professionally, and in such a way that everyone comes away a winner. And that's
I like the way you do that, because that's been a theme through your life, not only in the Go-Giver books, but also in your life, that you want everyone to be a winner. How can we make this win, 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 or as many wins as we need to string in there for all the parties that are involved? And that's good. It seems like that's even more important today than it was before because of our world. Sometimes there's a little too much rancor and fighting, I think, with social media, et cetera. At least I'm thinking that. What are your thoughts on that, Bob?
Oh, I agree with you totally. I mean, at this point, it's almost like people are divided up into 2 camps. They're no longer defending their values. They're defending their team. And there's a significant difference there. And because of that, now it's almost, and you see this on social media a lot, but you also see it at family get-togethers and social functions, where if you don't agree with my view of politics or whatever, not only are you wrong, you are evil. You have horrible intent. You know, you see somebody on Facebook that makes a statement and somebody comments back and says, people like you are the worst excuses for human beings. You hate other people and you want people, whatever. You want the world to crash and burn. And, the person who gets insulted like that never seems to respond by writing thank you so much for pointing out the error of my ways. I hadn't thought about it like that before until you just insulted everything I stand for. I am renouncing my current beliefs and I'm on your side. It
Yeah.
just doesn't happen. So people, they can hide behind their computer or whatever they're doing, and they can be mean and nasty and vicious, but what they're not being is persuasive. They're not being influential. They're not moving people to another way of thinking or acting. They're doing things in such a way that people are simply maintaining their positions even stronger.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. As a matter of fact, that's one of the things you talk about in the book. And the way you do it in the book, it's the parable. It's a short parable. You can read the book in about an hour, 2 hours or so. Real easy to read. And it tells a story where if you just hear something, you go, okay, that's nice. If you get the story going, the emotions, and you see the characters and develop with that, it's even better. Matter of fact, if it's all right with you, Bob, I'm going to use my iPad here and want to see a little bit of that. Can I go to the book and let's look at a quote from there?
Absolutely.
Bob, here's a quote that I saw that I was really like. They were telling the story and someone was talking about opposite cousins. They said, similar on the surface, opposite at their core. Manipulation is about getting someone to do what you want them to for your reasons. Persuasion is getting someone to do what they want to do. Notice italicized there, all they, for their reasons. Bob, tell us a little bit more about that and why that is so important in getting along with people and getting what you really want in life.
Sure. Well, influence, by definition, on a very basic level, is simply the ability to move a person or persons to a desired action, usually within the context of a specific goal. This can be done one of two ways: by manipulation, which is control, which is force, which is fraud, which is all the yucky stuff, Terry, that we think about. Or it can be done by persuasion, which is benevolent, which means that it's through the other person's own volition. So the great influencer is always asking themselves questions to kind of check their own motives. These questions might be, how does what I'm asking this person to do, how does it align with their goals, their needs, their wants, their desires? Because as Dale Carnegie wrote 80 years or so ago in his classic How to Win Friends and Influence People, people do things for their reasons, not our reasons. Now, if you're manipulating, it means you're playing on a person's emotions, you're using ways to make them feel bad or stupid or inept or whatever to get them to do something that is for your benefit only. With persuasion, you're not doing that. With persuasion, you are legitimately asking questions to discover their wants, needs, desires, their values, what challenge they would like to overcome, or what they would like to, okay? And so really that's what it is. It comes down to intent, but that's not where it ends. See, a manipulator may not want necessarily be trying to hurt the other person, but if that's what it takes to get their way, they'll do it. It's all about them. They're totally I-focused. With a persuader, that can never happen, because in order for a persuader to feel good about the situation, they've got to know that that other person is benefiting and also feels good about themselves and about the situation. So like yeah, we say the two are cousins, right? There's bad people out there with great people skills, unfortunately. That's just the way the world is. To deny it would be to say it's naive. So yes, you can influence through those two ways: the good cousin and the evil cousin. And of course, what we want to do is encourage people to persuade and do it that way.
Yeah, I like the way you say that. So persuasion is really the goal, and that is a completely different cousin than the manipulation. Mm-hmm. Very good. Now, another thing you mentioned in the book is you talked about something that I had not heard of before, and I thought it was fascinating when you talk about the importance of negotiating, but being a natural negotiator. I had not heard that. Let's take a look at that in the book. Bob, in the book here, it talks about a natural negotiation. It says it's a contract you make with yourself. I like that perspective. You can't successfully come to agreement with another person if you can't first successfully come to agreement with yourself. Right. Every dispute is first and foremost a dispute with yourself. I had not heard that before, but that really resonates with me, and the way you fleshed that out in the story, I think is good. Tell us a little bit more about this thing called natural negotiation.
Well, one of the characters in the story, Jackson, he has a line of really delicious, healthy, fantastic pet food. And when his mentor, because in this story there are two mentors and two proteges, when his mentor, Judge Celia Henshaw, she's telling him about natural negotiation. What do you mean by natural negotiation? And she says, well, what do you mean by natural pet food? And he says, well, it's simply the ingredients that are real, that are authentic. Nothing else is added, right? And really, that's what it's about. Negotiation, when done correctly, is not about being someone we're not. It's not about using all these fancy techniques and stuff. Well, I mean, there's time and place for everything, but it's really, it needs to come from ourselves. It needs to come from that authentic core. And when, we talk about every disagreement is first and foremost a disagreement with yourself, it means we have to be able to master our emotions. And so it's very important that first we understand that we're in control of our own emotions, we're in control of ourselves, and that way we can operate from a very constructive premise.
Yeah, I like that. That makes a lot of sense that we're doing it centered within ourselves, embracing the core values that we know are important, whatever we're doing. Now, another thing that you mentioned here is I was going through the book and I read your book twice. I mean, it was that good. I went through it and just loved it, really liked it. It was about feelings because we're addressing feelings. And a lot of people say, well, I've got my feelings and this is my opinion, et cetera. And the way you say it in the book, I thought was so brilliant. Let me share that with you in just a moment. Bob, I love the way you put it in the book here. She said she touched her hand lightly to his arm. Again, it's okay to have your feelings, Jackson. She said once again, you don't even have to change them. Just don't let them get behind the wheel. I thought, that sounds brilliant. Tell us a little bit more about that, Bob, and what you mean with it.
Terry, the sages of old asked the question, who is a mighty person? And they answered, that person who can control their own emotions and make of an enemy or of a potential enemy a friend. This is really where it all begins, because it's only when we can master our own emotions, when we're in control of ourselves, it's only then that we're even in the position to take a potentially negative situation or person and turn it into a win for everyone involved. On the other hand, when we, based on what someone else says or does, we allow that to push our emotional hot button and we make ourselves frustrated or sad or mad and angry, right? Now, not only can we not be part of the solution, we're just as much a part of the problem as they are. Now, we know this, and yet how often do we let this happen? Why? Well, because we're human beings. We're emotional creatures. It's how we're built. And we'd like to think we're logical, and to a certain extent we are, but we're pretty emotion driven. We make major decisions based on emotion, and we back up those decisions with logic. We rationalize, right? We tell ourselves rational lies in order to justify that decision. Now, with this in mind, we're not saying that you should lose your emotions. We're not saying you should forego your emotions. We're not saying you should deny your emotions. First, that wouldn't be logical because we're emotional creatures, but it's also not necessary. By all means, emotions are a wonderful part of life. They bring us joy. They make life worthwhile. No, have your emotions. Just make sure you're in control of your emotions. It means sometimes you need to set them aside, momentarily at least, but make sure you're the master of your emotions rather than your emotions being the master of you. Or as one of my great mentors, Don DiScumaci, often says, by all means, take your emotions along for the ride, but make sure you are driving the car, right?
Good words of advice.
Yeah, and as the judge says, and this was, of course, inspired by Donnie, the judge tells Jackson, when you let your emotions drive the car, you're at the mercy of a drunk driver.
I think that's well said, and we want to make sure that we do it. We're going to have those. We own those emotions. The way you say it so eloquently, Bob, makes a lot of sense. And for those of you watching this, think about that. You've got the emotions, and in that moment, you want to blow up or you want to do something else emotionally. Step back and let your thinking part of you rule in that moment. And this is what's part of influence. You will be much more influential when you're in control versus when you're running out of control. Well, now, Bob, you finished up the book with really good points all the way through, making 5 points. And I want to share a few of those just briefly, but zero in on one in just a moment here at the end of the book. Bob, here you summarize these in the 5 secrets of genuine influence. Now, in the book, you go in depth in this because at first brush you think, oh, it means this. Wow. But there's that, yes, and even more. But I really want to put something in there that you talk about. Number 3 there, the smile, set the frame. Because that is so important in influence. What do you mean by set the frame, and how is a smile related to that?
Sure. Well, what is a frame? A frame is the foundation from which everything evolves. When you have set the frame correctly or reset someone else's negative frame, you're 80% of the way there to the results you want. My favorite story about the most perfectly set frame happened several years ago at a Dunkin' Donuts restaurant. That will not surprise you, Terry, because you know I'm a Dunkin' Donuts fanatic. So
Exactly. I think you keep their sales up there, like 85% of their sales or something is a Bob Burg consumption alone. Good place.
yeah. And there was a little boy, little toddler, probably 2.5 years old, who was running around the restaurant. His parents called him over, back over to the table. So he starts to walk over, and suddenly he slips. He takes a spill on the floor. He falls. Now, he wasn't hurt, you could tell, but you could also tell he was very surprised. And the first thing he did was he looked over at the 2 people he trusts most in the world, his mom and dad, to get their interpretation of the event. What happened. He wanted to know what happens next. Now, I truly believe that had the parents become upset, started to panic and run over and, oh no, are you okay? I think he would have started to cry. But what the mom and dad did is they handled it so beautifully. They walked over calmly with smiles on their faces, and they applauded and they laughed and they said, "Oh, that looks like so much fun! What a good trick!" And immediately he began to laugh. What the parents did is they set a productive frame from which he could operate. And we can do that in any interpersonal situation. For example, and here's where a smile might come in. Sound just easy, and it is. When you meet someone, to have that inside out, from the heart smile on your face, that says so much. It communicates this to this person, that you're a friend, that you come in friendship, that you're looking forward to this connection, what have you. That's fine. That seems pretty easy, and it is. But what about when you have someone who kind of comes to the situation not so happy or not right? And let's say, for instance, you're about to do a sales presentation for someone, and this is a person who seems very uptight and defensive, and perhaps she has been taken advantage of by a salesperson, or maybe felt hard sold, and that's what she thinks of salespeople, what have you. That's her frame. And it's up to us to reset that frame. So what we might say is something simply like, Mary, while we've been able to help a lot of people with this product, whether or not it's the right answer for you, we simply can't know without exploring deeper and determining whether it meets your needs. So please know our conversation is for both of us to discover that. And if it does, great. If not, that's okay too.
I like the way you frame that.
Right.
That
Now
really
we reframe that from adversaries, right? That the salesperson against the prospect, to 2 allies who are headed in the same direction, which is looking out for her best interest and helping to discover her needs and seeing if it's the right fit for her.
Absolutely. And of course, you're borrowing that from your great book that you also wrote, The Adversaries into Allies. Great book. And those of you that are watching this, do a search on that on Amazon, on Google, Adversaries into Allies. You will be glad that you did that, when you can manipulate that, not in a bad way, but you're manipulating more your actions so that you're able to work with others, and you're able to make sure that you really are connecting with them, because we're out for win-win-win, all those win situations. Bob, you've done a marvelous job. You and John David Mann, who wrote this book on the Go-Giver Influencer, really important. Any final words to those that are watching that you'd like to leave them with before they go over to Amazon or wherever they like to buy books and purchase one of these?
Well, Terry, I think it's understanding that, what we're not talking about is compromise as much as we're talking about collaboration. Because compromise can be, there's a time and place for everything, but compromise can be sort of a lose-lose. Both people give up something in order to placate, right? Whereas collaboration is what turns 1 + 1 into 3. and it expands the pie for everyone. And I think it's important in today's world for us to know that tact need not be confused with compromise, that you can always speak tactfully and respectfully to others without compromising your values.
Bob, those are words of wisdom. We thank you so much for being here with us today. Thanks for putting the book together.
Thank you so much.
And for those of you that are watching this, think about what we've just talked about here. This is a book that can literally change the way that you interact with others, going from manipulation over to persuasion, helping others, being there in a great way. That book is packed full of information. Like I said, I read it twice, and I'll probably go back and read it again. It's one of the reasons I like having it on my Kindle, on my Android, on my iPad. I can have it and look at it and say, hey, there was a concept about that, and go back and do it. Get this. It'll be an investment in yourself, just a few coins, and then the time reading it will be very short, but the benefits to you will be enormous. I'm Terry Brock with terrybrock.com. Thank you for being with us today.